It is time for Greg Garza and our friends from Beyond Goals for the Friday Free Kick. How are you, my friend?
Good. How are you doing, bud?
It is a Friday where we have our rounds of chaos that we are preparing for the weekend. We have action at 3 o'clock involving the women's national team.
Okay.
We have the what we traditionally have before Parky come in is what we have termed is the weekend whip around, basically where we preview all of the matches as quickly as humanly possible. And we realized that because there are so many matches that go on, we have to start 15 minutes early on Fridays just to get them all in before you or Cap show up. So literally, we started at 8:45 to get everything in before the Friday free kick. We have learned this over the span of the year that we got to get stuff done early, man. That's how it's got to go.
I like it. I like it. Well, hey, you're trucking along right now.
Well, and there was a question that came up, and I want to start with this because I think that it also impacts mentors, mentees, etc. And it has to do with a combination of things. It has to do with playing on decision day when there's nothing to play for, which is currently the case, sadly with Atlanta United. And then also once the season is over, continuing to show up at the office and be there and continue to be a part of postseason practice, postseason elements, those kinds of things until your future is decided. Because just because the season's not over doesn't mean that your contract isn't up and that your future isn't decided. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic that you kind of have to balance here because you're trying to be there for your current employer and possibly future employers as the season's coming to a close.
It is by far the most nerve-wracking, I think, emotions that you can feel as a player to go through that. I think in my personal opinion, more than any other sport.
Mm-hmm.
More than any other sport, because you are dealing with not only business within the United States, but you are dealing with business all over the world. And that's the truth behind all the curtains that I think a lot of people don't see from the outside. Going in that last day to where you have to leave a very good last impression, right? I'm going to say a lot of these guys already know that they're not staying, or that they're leaving, or that they're going somewhere else, or that their contract is not going to be renewed. And so what first impression are you then giving for the people who are probably watching you, in case they say, okay, this guy is ready. This guy is, this was his last game. He's still fit. He's ready to jump in wherever he needs to go next year. And then there's so many different wings to just this conversation. And you have the guys that didn't have many opportunities throughout the whole entire year, and it's now their time to kind of showcase themselves on if they are going to stay, and if they are selected to stay. This is what you're getting. It's full of emotions, because then you have a lot of the guys that are guaranteed to stay. They have to show up. I would assume they have to show up on Monday, right? And
Yeah.
they have to work a few more weeks until you get the time off. I just remember in my case, when I was here on loan the very first year, that was not the case. I was not able to set foot in training because I did not have a guaranteed contract. And you're kind of in the middle of everything. Once again, trying to leave that last impression, but so many questions up in the air, because you're not even able to train or work for your employer because of not being guaranteed. And for me, that was it's full of emotions, right? You go up and down. I remember in my personal story and going through that into the end of 2017, I had made the All-Star team that year. I thought I had the season. It was my rejuvenating and revival of my career after being out of the game for so long. And you have your hands up in the air and you're asking yourself what's going on, because I had all of my stuff in storage. I was ready to move back to Mexico because I wasn't told anything after the 2017 season that I was going to stay. And so I wasn't even able to train with the team to finish that season even though we lost against Columbus in the playoffs. And we came back. And even when we came back for preseason training, I still wasn't able to train because I did not know what my future was going to be. And so that just, I mean, you have a month or two of a lot of guys that are going through so many different emotions within their heart, their brain, of really not knowing what's next. And I would say that is probably the most, the most nerve wracking. And I think a lot of people from the outside don't realize that the business side can really take over and it can really affect your emotions. And as now a mentor and now having mentees that kind of not such as a similar process, because these are a lot of kids and it's not their job. They're not making money to put food on the table for their families. But for young pros out there, it's one thing that you kind of really have to you have to tell them. For our young pros that we have, it's helping them understand this is it, right? This is the territory that you've set yourself in. This is the territory that you have to adapt to. You have to get used to, and that's what it's all about, right? And you're going to go through these emotions. You're going to go through these things, and it comes with its territory.
Because at the same time, even if you're talking to mentees who might be not quite of professional age, there's still that message of giving 100% because you never know who's watching and you never know when they're watching. You can't just wander into a situation and go, yeah, I'll just kind of show up and kind of look like I'm going through the motions. There's never that second chance to show somebody your value. And I think that that's the message that can be construed here as well for young mentees. It's like, you never know who's watching and you never know when that they see you show up in that extra day.
And it's almost to just give them that opportunity to understand that every training session that they have, wherever they are, is the exact same thing, right? It's funny. My mom is in town visiting now, and I had mentor sessions all day yesterday, and so many of the things that I talked about, and it just goes back to the things that probably she told me when I was a kid, right? Every day is a tryout, right? Every day is a tryout, whether it's practice, whether it's a gym workout, whether it's a fitness test. Every day is a tryout, and that's the mentality you have to give to all these kids and to young pros, right? How many young pros do you see? And that comes from the basis of really Michael and I creating the program that we have. Is so many rookies and so many kids that we did see come through the system and come through, having the opportunity in the world at their feet, and they become complacent, right? They think they've gotten there, and they don't understand, those responsibilities that come along with it. That understanding that every day that they have is going to be a tryout to keep your job, right? It's not any more of you still have the fun and the passion and the love and everything behind it, but at the same time, it's the business aspect of helping them understand that every day it can be your last. Any day can be your last within the world of professional sports.
This might be a generational question to ask, but as your mentees, as you have different generations, Gen Z, Gen AA, whatever it is these days, Gen Zero, is there a different interpretation of that idea of, you've got to give 100%? Do you have to explain to one generation more than the other the importance of being there 100% of the time? Or is it still that universal thought of, yeah, we get it, and each generation understands this? Is there one generation right now that still may need more convincing more than the others, or do they get it?
I would say most definitely, right? It's this new generation, that everything is self reflected, right? Everything is also self exception, right? You're trying to be accepted in every environment that you're in. Social media plays a huge part of that. So many different things within kind of their realm plays a huge part of what they think about themselves and how they carry themselves and how down they can be and how to go through these certain emotions, where we've talked about it in the past as well, right? I think if you look back in the day when I was a kid, my head coach when I was playing on my club team probably used to grab me by the collar and pull me into place where I needed to be.
Right.
And that was perfectly normal back then, right? And in today's world, that is the last. I mean, if that's happening, you're probably going to go to jail. And
Yeah.
and it's a different generation that we live in. But I think maybe And I think about when I was a rookie, right? I think about when I was a rookie, and I mean, Parky probably has better stories than me because he had Taylor Twellman as his veteran, right?
Yeah.
But I think just myself of becoming a rookie, it was just stepping into that environment and stepping into that situation, and not saying a word and wanting to gain my respect, or wanting to gain, sorry, their respect as much as possible, and putting in as much work as I could, and almost built tough, right? Whereas today, this is my honest opinion, I think kids are still so very tough, but we have kind of leveled down that mental toughness of helping them understand that once they step into that environment, they have to embrace it and they have to cherish it as much as possible. And like I said, I actually wrote down a quote. It was actually from Facing Nolan. I don't know if you've seen it, the new Nolan Ryan documentary, which is really interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
And I loved it. I watched it on the plane. I was traveling this last week, and watched it on the plane. And there were so many things that he said about his career. And it was about him. He had pulled his hamstring and he was about to throw a no hitter. And he was in the ninth inning, or he was in the eighth inning, and pulled his hamstring and needed 3 more outs. Right. And how many times did he do that over and over in his career? And I mean, he holds the records for as many no hitters as anyone else in the history of baseball. And he said that mental, and this is what it was. He said, when you talk about pain, whether it be mental or physical, right? He said, I don't call it pain, I call it discomfort. Mm-hmm. And when you're playing at that level, you learn that you have to play with it. And it comes with the territory in which you are in, right? And that really stood out to me because it's so true. There's so many adverse moments that you face, whether it's in a game or whether it's in your career, whether it's within a season or within a year, that they're going to be painful moments. They're going to be moments that you have to be made tough. And I think that was the best way to kind of describe and kind of understand what that means, coming from someone that is probably viewed upon as one of the biggest legends within baseball.
Well, because I mean, even if you look at it and how you present those ideas, I think that the idea of being in pain versus being in discomfort, it's two separate mentalities. It's two separate mindsets. Pain, I think, gives that idea that it's harsher when it comes to levels. Discomfort, it's a nag. It's a niggle. It's just something that, it's like when we were growing up, when your buddy, like, he wanted to pound you in the shoulder, pound you in the muscle, and he puts his knuckle up there and he hits you in the arm. That's
the dead arm.
That's discomfort. That's discomfort. Yeah. Pain is something that is an entirely different level, and it's negotiating, I think, all of those different levels of difficulty that is there for mentors and mentees, because difficulty will always be there, whether it's mental, physical, or emotional, but it's understanding that there can be levels assigned to them, and the idea that you can work your way through the discomfort, even if it is pain, and how you register it in your brain, I think, is key to success as well.
Most definitely. And it's so interesting because when I heard that in the movie, and I rewinded it like 3 times, and just the way that he kind of really explained it. And I mean, there's so many good moments within that documentary and that film of just, learning so much from one of the greats of baseball. He's also from Texas. So
yeah,
that's a huge plus in my book.
There you go.
But at the same time, there's so many times where Mike and I will say, what does confidence mean, or what is understanding how to cope with pressure, and understanding how you can use the value of confidence. Yeah, there are going to be bouts of confidence every time you play, or the nervousness or the pressure that you feel. And how many times did we deal with bouts of confidence, that up and down understanding of what confidence can be? And we always talk about, confidence is not, not necessarily feeling that fear, right, or that nervousness, and that comes with the territory, like we've spoken, but it is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, and it is constantly adapting. And you ask so many kids, well, how many times during the game do you have to adapt, and you have to get comfortable with an unknown territory that you are not familiar with? And it's over and over and over again, and it starts to build that basis of consistency within their mindset, and helping them understand, okay, you know what, even if there are uncomfortable or discomfort, moments within the game that I'm feeling, and whether it be mentally or physically or emotionally or whatever it may be, I'm continuously adapting, and I'm going through these things, and getting and adapting, and turning them, hopefully into a comfort zone, right? And helping them understand that as they're doing that, that builds their confidence, that builds their want and need to know that they are able to accomplish things. And I think that's, like we said, you said it's a mindset. It's a mindset, and it's a mental battle between the ears of helping, a lot of young mentees understand, like we said from the very beginning, of just embracing and cherishing those uncomfortable moments. And even from the initial point of this conversation was talking about going through these uncomfortable and discomfort moments of knowing what is next in your career, what is next for a lot of these guys that have this last game this weekend.
And at the same time, it's all about fine lines as well, because we talk about the fine line between pain and discomfort. We talk about the fine line between confidence and cockiness. There are always those fine lines that have to be navigated to not only be a good teammate, but be a good person outside of the athletic endeavor. And I think that part of your mentoring and conversations with mentees is navigating that fine line as well, because if you go too far across that line, say the line of confidence and cockiness, then it turns into a negative and it impacts others around you that much more. And it's making sure that that fine line is right there, and that it's a part of your DNA, but you don't stray too far one way or the other.
That is a perfect question and opportunity for the next conversation next week with Michael, about the mental curve, and you can ask him about it. He
Okay.
speaks about the mental curve, and that's what he calls it. And it's just understanding what you are saying right now, of understanding the highs and lows within everything that you do, whether it be on the field and off the field, and how to keep a balance in between all of them. And I'll let him give you the best explanation, because he says it a lot better than I do. I always tell people I'm the great motivator, and I'm the guy that's always going to call you bro and dude and man. And he's the monotone dad that just gives you this great piece of wisdom and advice in a very monotone way, and just it works perfectly. So I'll let him answer that question for you.
Okay, so then let's get into being the motivator, because I know that with you and Cap having two different ways to go about things, I think that that's part of the really cool yin and yang about the two of you and Beyond Goals. It's getting the message, but you're getting it a bunch of different ways. Is it the Texas in you that created the motivator, or was it something that came about over time? How did you become you as a mentor after your time as an athlete, as a professional athlete?
I think it comes. I think it comes from probably just the way that I was brought up, and the mindset that I had of, just that winning. I talk about that winning mentality, right? When I was in kindergarten, I was the youngest one in class, and I always wanted to be the line leader, right? I was a year younger than everybody. I always wanted to be the line leader, not necessarily because I communicated it, but because I just wanted to be the first wolf of the pack, and I wanted to lead. And we talk about that with Parky all the time. It's just understanding, leading by action and leading by example is something that I always wanted to do within, from my upbringing. And I think my parents are to thank for that. But I think over time of then being, immersed into different cultures, and then learning how to lead in those different cultures as well, has just really allowed me to gain all that experience and wisdom and knowledge to then use in my professional career, to just, we talk about one of the main contributing factors, and Mike always uses it all the time, and I'll piggyback off what he always says, is just that, Greg's biggest role within the team, and when we won the championship, and my role was not how well I played. And it was more so of just gluing all the pieces together. And it was being that middleman of English, Spanish, the middleman of coaches, players, the middleman of everything went through me. Whether it was Tata trying to explain everything to the starters, whether it was Tata trying to explain everything to the subs, whether it was the players trying to really gel with each other and trying to explain, this is what we need to do, this is where we need to be. And I was always that go-to guy, that middleman, kind of gelled and glued everything together. And I think that was my biggest contributing factor, of wanting to lead in that way. And I think that now transfers over to the mentor within me, and still wanting to create that camaraderie, and be, somewhat of the goofy guy and making jokes and just creating that camaraderie within all different languages, but also within the locker room. And now all of these mentees that we have, it's, they are a part of our locker room. It is our sacred, our sacred spot. That's, we always, you talk about players and different teams that you play for, and the locker room is sacred, right? Not even coaches are allowed in the locker room, in my opinion. And that your training facility locker room or your home locker room in the stadium, the coach only comes in and speaks whenever, right before the game, because if not, that moment right there is for all the players to build that camaraderie, to be a family, right? We always say, as we get older, coaches come and go, but players really stick together for much of a much longer period of time within professional sports. So that bunker of having a great locker room is super important, and I kind of now use that experience and knowledge and now transferred it over into the mentorship as well.
Have you ever surprised yourself about your mentoring and the impact that you've had on others?
Of course, yeah. I think Mike and I always talk about it, and he'll be down next week. We get to share everything with Boys and Girls Club the whole entire week, so we're super excited about that. We get to work closely with them, and we get to do some other things, some really cool things with the Atlanta United Youth Academy as well, and meet with all of their age groups and all the parents and players as well. So we're super excited about that. But at the same time, going off that is, we're constantly learning, right? You even as a player, you want to consistently learn and constantly learn each day and every day that you finish that day. That was something that I did as a player. I wrote down little reminders in my little journal, or little reminders after we had a training, and said, holy crap, okay, this was a great training session. I need to remember this, because this is going to make me successful when I have this opportunity to do it on the field and within a game. And I think both of us, Mike and I, are continuously doing that now that we don't play anymore. If we see something that we really think about, oh, this is a great idea to kind of implement and throw in within our mentorship, because it's so much needed, we do so. And I think that's the beauty of, when you want to start something new, and especially for us, of being I guess you could say very new entrepreneur. I think we're pretty much, as players, you're an entrepreneur your whole life, right? Because you're kind of working for yourself, and you're trying to make things happen for yourself. But I think it's that constant learning curve that we go through in everything that we do. And Mike and I are constantly learning every single day, new ins and outs, the rights and wrongs, the do's and don'ts of even the mentorship as well.
All right, 2-minute warning. I know that you've got an important meeting with Michael, and I know that you've got a jet in a couple of minutes. So Twitch Pitch has a question for you before you go.
Yeah.
From Burned. Since the women's national team will play in front of 87,000 tonight, what is the largest crowd you've ever played in front of? Which game, which stadium, what was it?
Yeah, I read that, and I've beaten that.
So what?
No, I think that's. I mean, honestly, I can't wait until we have a women's team here in Atlanta. I think we are in need of one. You see all these other cities that have success in doing so, and we are in need of one. And I think you'd probably fill up the Mercedes-Benz if they got to play there. Honestly, that's my honest opinion. I had a few games, one against Club America with Atlas, close to 100,000 people in there. We won 3-0, and then had a Dos Cero match in Alamo Dome, and I think we ended up fitting, like, I want to say it was like 105,000 people in the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, and they had it closed, and they ended up having so many standing people. I mean, that was a game to where I remember playing in it, and one of the only games in my career, and maybe the end of the championship here in the Mercedes-Benz, but I think it just being so open, it allows you to hear a little bit more than everything that's close to you. But I remember that game. It was one of the few games, probably one of the couple games in my career, to where I legit could not hear the person that was talking next to me. If anybody was giving me any information, if the center back was telling me to move left, move right, I just remember walking off at halftime, and my ears were just absolutely ringing. And that's probably one of the only moments that I felt in that moment of realizing, wow, this is a lot of people.
Yeah. And really looking forward to it. I know we got folks who are diving in, sitting there rack about playing at the Benz. My guess is that's where they would play.
They better.
Yeah, and then USL Women's Super League coming up as well, considering that there's a champ in the W League down in Statesboro. Get out of here. I know you've got a meeting. We'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
Sounds good. It was awesome today. Appreciate it, man. Take care.
All right, Greg Garza hanging out with us from Beyond Goals. And it's always good to catch up with Greg and Michael on a weekly basis. And you saw that, you heard that Greg is going to be coming down, that Greg will be here and that Michael will be coming down for some stuff with, I think, United, the Boys and Girls Clubs. Very, very cool. At BG Mentoring on the Twitters.